welcome. Today I am interviewing Rachel Trusty. She is a homeschool graduate, and I am so excited that she is here to share her story with us. Hello, Rachel, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, we are so excited to hear your story. So let's just jump right in. Rachel, could you share with us your homeschool high school experience and where did life take you after you graduated your homeschool academy?
Yeah. So my homeschool experience overall, I just loved it. Honestly. I'm 23, so not too old. I graduated, 5 years ago.
Okay.
But it's, homeschooling is something that I want to do with future children that I have, I'm sure, and everything. So I just love it in general. But I feel like growing up, I did not like any kind of structured education, like anything that my mom would try to give me. We tried a bunch of different curriculums, specifically with me, not so much my siblings, because they were easier, I think, for her. But with me, I didn't like being told what to do. And I was a very stubborn little person.
Where are you in the birth order?
I am second of four.
Okay.
Yeah, right. But I'm kind of middle year-wise. So I have a brother that's much older and then two younger siblings that are several years younger.
So you're at that stage where the parent thinks they know what they're doing with the first child, and then the second child comes along and it's like, wait a minute, you can't do it the same way as the oldest child, right?
Yeah, my older brother was definitely more academic. He just textbooks and testing, and he just did so great. And that left me like, well, I should do so great. But that was definitely not the way that I learned with textbooks and structure and schedules. So I did not want to work on school at all for a lot of my younger life until probably high school, which is when I got to where I actually enjoyed some math. Even math was awful for me younger. I actually started working because it was like, oh, I want education. So I want to be learning these things. And so I worked on them, which at that point it was, I feel like, difficult. Maybe in some ways because I hadn't worked very much at my education before then. But also in a lot of ways, I already had like the maturity of being 14, 15 years old. So I was able to figure out kind of what I didn't figure out about learning in my earlier years. And then after high school, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. I had planned to go to college. And so that's kind of where I started. I applied to college and I was going to, I was looking at apartments where I was going to go and signing up for classes and getting textbooks. But that just sounded like torture. And I was like, probably a good thing to do. I don't know what I want to do exactly, but college seems like a good thing. But I just eventually decided, no, this is definitely not going to be for me right now. College is just not going to be taking me where I want to go. I don't have a clear picture. So actually, my senior year of high school, my English credit was, my mom gave me an English credit for writing a book.
Okay.
Something that I just wanted to do. And when I decided not to go to college, I decided to start writing, which is what I do now. I'm an author now.
Okay.
And so I started writing, and I did that for about a year. I published one book, and then after a year, I moved across the country to be a nanny.
Okay.
And I kind of gave up writing for those 2 years. I still thought about it sometimes, but I just was focused on being a nanny and doing
Okay.
that. I was a live-in nanny, so it's,
Okay.
a lot of work. And then after 2 years of doing that, I actually got really sick. So I had to stop and move in with my parents.
Okay.
And then for the past 2 years, I've been kind of recovering from what happened. And also, I started writing again and have, decided that that's what I want to do. So that's where I am, education and career wise.
Okay. And so what do you write?
I write young adult fiction.
Young adult fiction. Okay. I have a couple of writers in my family, and I know how much time that goes into that. It's like, oh, I'm a writer. But no, writing is work. And so it's amazing that your parents gave you an education during high school that was catered to your desires and your interests,
Yeah.
and that you graduated, and even though you weren't sure what you wanted, you still had the ability to make that decision for yourself. You were starting it off doing college, going to go to college, but you still had the self-esteem to say, you know what, that's just not really what I wanted to do. So I think that's wonderful. And then to move across the country, that is amazing, and take on a totally different type of job just to experience it. And then you come full circle. And I'm sorry that you had some illness. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that you had a family that you could go back home to and recuperate and rest and refocus. Like, what am I going to be doing now? Like, now that I can't nanny, and I'm what's the next steps for me? And your parents are giving you that freedom to do that. And that is wonderful. What do you think your homeschool experience, what do you think helped prepare you to be able to make those decisions and to be brave to move across the country and to write, to be a writer and say, I'm going to put my words on paper and I'm going to share them with the world, and I'm going to be okay with that? Like, what do you think that your homeschool high school experience helped prepare you to put yourself out there like that?
That's an interesting question. I think all growing up, I wasn't around very many other homeschool families. Just where we lived and everything, there just weren't other homeschool families around. So it was a different type of education than everyone around me.
Yeah.
And sometimes they really just didn't understand it. They were like, "Oh, you do school at home, or I don't know, you sit at a desk in your house and you do these assignments," or they had like assumptions. And I would, explain to them, sometimes friends or something, like, no, that's not, I mean, some homeschoolers do that and that's the way they want to do it. But like for us, it was very much like we read lots of books and we go outside a lot. And it was more, not so much the structure, which is how my mom helped me with, not being someone who doesn't like structure as much. But yeah,
She accommodated that for you, but you still, in order to be a writer, that's a very disciplined trade. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you don't like structure, but you have to go and write. And that takes discipline. So it's not, sometimes we confuse as parents that a lack of structure means a lack of discipline. And that could be, structure can still look different. It doesn't have to be sitting at a desk doing textbooks, right? It's the structure of it. And so in all of that, how do you feel, or do you even feel that your homeschool high school experience failed you in a way to prepare you for life after graduation?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that this week. I think it's an interesting question because I've been asked that same type of question before by just friends and people I work with. Like, is there something about homeschooling that was just like, oh, like that didn't do a very good job? And honestly, I
Hello.
think that like falling like an education falling short or not teaching specific things is kind of irrelevant pretty soon in adulthood. Like after not very many adult years, I feel like I know that I could have made choices by now to remedy any ways that an education as a child and in high school fell short. And I think that is definitely something I gained from homeschool because I saw my mom, she would tell us, she would be like, oh, the way I'm teaching you this or I'm showing you this thing, it isn't working. I don't think that way is working for you. So let's try it this way. So I would see her like in the work that she did as an educator at homeschool mom, and just my mom. She would admit that like, oh, this is falling short, and I know there's a way to do it better. So I think when I think about it in education and what it maybe didn't do for me, I kind of bring it back to myself. I'm like, well, I'm an adult. I can choose to, maybe I didn't gain this thing from my education while I was younger, but like, am I gonna just let myself continue without that thing if that's what I want? So I think that's interesting that, homeschool parents, they can, maybe not do something that would help their children prepare for later years or careers or college, but teaching like the concepts of, yeah, you can educate yourself or do this thing for yourself or fix it.
Well, it sounds almost like you're saying that the failures that you were experiencing, the immediate failures with curriculum or trying a certain program, that what your mother was doing was teaching you how to learn.
Yeah.
And so, I always say that my kids are going to have gaps. I had to wrap my head around that, a long time ago. And I had to be okay with that because my kids' interests are all over the place. And I couldn't fill their little heads with all the information
Right.
they needed to know. But learning how to learn and filling those gaps, what you're saying is that you can do that as an adult. So, and that where you have felt that homeschooling might have felt like a failure, it was actually a learning process, that sometimes things don't go like you plan, but you have the skills now as an adult to say that didn't work, but I can try this. It's even like with your own health, right? Like you were in a career, you were nannying,
Yeah.
and you got sick. You hadn't planned on that. You had to regroup and you had to figure out your next steps. And you did that beautifully in your writing, and you've published books, and that's amazing. Rachel, like the advice that we as homeschool parents, if we take the time and listen to you graduates, we can learn so much because you lived it. Like we facilitated it and we're living it as a parent, but it's not the same. Like this was your life. And it's amazing that you're saying right now, if I have children, I'm thinking about homeschooling. And like every homeschool mom wants to hear that, we're trying this and I might want to try it as an adult. It doesn't mean that you have to homeschool your children when you have them. But right now you're thinking it didn't screw me up as bad as I'm thinking I would like to do this with my own children. And so I would love to ask you if you could give a parent some advice that's, we have people in the conference that are either thinking about homeschooling high school or they're in high school right now. This is your chance. Like all my kids are like, oh, I wish I could tell a homeschool parent this. What is your advice that you would give to a homeschool parent that is homeschooling their teens?
I would say to not put pressure on any one part of any of it, of what you're teaching or how you're teaching it, because it's like we talked about, like it's not failings, it's a learning process. You're teaching, you wanting them to learn, you're both learning together. So I would definitely say to not put pressure on any one part of how you're doing something or how your high schooler is doing something. So I think that as homeschool moms, obviously I've never been a homeschool mom yet. And the children I cared for, like as a nanny, were very young. So during that time, I actually thought about like, oh, what it'll be like to have my own children. And I would teach, the little girl that I took care of was 3 and 4 years old. And she would learn tons of things and I would teach her tons of things. And she was very, advanced with her speaking and letters and writing. She was already starting to write at 4. So she was very, unusual. But I thought it was interesting that what I thought about learning compared to maybe like the children's parents, which I got a close-up view of what their parents thought about learning because I was with, in the home.
Yeah.
And their mother wasn't homeschooled. She went to public school and her family was very much into public school. It's like a big thing. And my views on education were just, I felt like more natural. So I didn't want to judge what she was, thinking, but I feel like as a homeschool parent, sometimes as you go into high school, you want to put more labels on things. And I saw that like even with my mom, who is not into labels at all. I was more into the labels than she was.
Okay.
But I was very much into like, oh, I got this credit or this grade. And it was, looking back now, I'm like, oh, that was so silly. But I think, not putting labels or worrying about those labels so much and just realizing that you've taught your kid for so many years. I mean, by the time they're in high school, they're 14. You've taught them so many things. Like they're a whole person. So at this point, you're not going to mess them up. And you're not going to mess up their lives during the last 4 years of their education if you haven't messed up their lives during the first 14.
Right.
And that's just, I think you can relax a lot more and let it continue to be natural instead of, oh, I've been homeschooling and they've been in school, but now they're in high school.
It's scary as a parent. It's scary.
But it's just continuing their education and they're going to keep learning no matter what you do or don't do. And then they're also going to keep learning after graduation.
Yeah, I think what you said was beautiful when you said your parent and you were learning together that, so high school, especially, you were the number 2 kid, but your homeschool experience wasn't the same as your brother. It's almost like starting all over again as a parent of having to facilitate an education for a child that didn't play by the rules of the first child, right? And so your parents had to learn along with your learning. And that's so beautiful to put it that way. And it is a natural experience as a parent to kind of dive into. You know what this child does, what motivates them. And even though like some homeschoolers now are pulling their kids out, some homeschool parents are pulling their children out at the junior high school level, but it doesn't make a difference. You as a parent, you still know how to navigate that child. And I think you said, just keep it natural and you're both learning. I think that's beautiful advice. And it's something that I personally have to remind myself, and I have reminded myself over the years, is that, I have 8 children. And so, okay, this educational journey in high school is going to look completely different than the last 5, right? And it's beautiful.
Just like their personalities.
Yeah. And that's really important. Yeah. And I think I would assume as the homeschool student, appreciated that your parents didn't treat you all the same. I'm sure that if you would look at your younger siblings, that it would be like it all looks different for them. And that's really important.
Sometimes I'm like, they had 4 of us. How do they manage all at the same time?
Well, Rachel, I do appreciate you taking time and sharing your life and being so vulnerable and putting it out there for us to hear. And thank you for sharing. It's going to really be beneficial for the homeschool community to hear your story. Thank you so much. And, we will be putting your book in the notes, but you want to tell us what books you've written?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I have 4 books out.
4. Okay.
Yeah, the first one is the one that I wrote during my senior year. So there's that one, which is Becoming Sankra's Queen. It's very fairy tale like. I can see my 17-year-old Rachel in it.
Oh, fun.
And then the sequel to that one, they're both kind of short books that probably teenage girls would like.
Okay.
And then I've published one book, not last year, my goodness, in 2020.
Okay.
Which was historical fiction.
Okay.
And then my latest one was last summer, which is Not Without Yesterday.
Oh, wonderful. 4 books. That's amazing. And so parents, if you have teenagers, look up Rachel Trusty's books and share a book written by a homeschooler with your kids. That's worth a read. Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us. I do appreciate all the time that you've given us today.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.